up, everybody? I am Dr. Tim Anderson, and I am super excited to talk to you today about one of the topics that truly transformed my cosmetic, restorative, my entire modern digital workflow, honestly. We often deal with technologies which are amazing these days, whether it's intraoral scanning, 3D printing, milling. All of these things are awesome. But where things get really interesting is when we have technologies that build upon themselves and we're actually able to change workflows. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because 3D printed temporaries in a modern digital restorative workflow, I think, will demystify the complexities of cosmetic dentistry in a lot of sense, because cosmetic dentistry can be really stressful. And it really doesn't need to be. But when we talk about dentistry from single tooth perspective, when we're dealing with just single teeth, things are relatively easy. You know, we've got, minor occlusion to deal with, contacts here and there. Aesthetically, a single tooth, you're just matching the neighbors. But the moment we start looking into full arch dentistry and we start looking at the person and the smile, things start changing. Things get more complex. The occlusion becomes more complicated. The wear patterns become tricky, and we're always worried about opening the video and all of these things. And honestly, so many of these barriers get in the way that prevent us as clinicians from allowing our patients to say yes to the best, and honestly preventing us from doing the dentistry that's fun, emotional-based dentistry. It's so much more fun. I don't care what your crown price is. I guarantee your patients think it's too expensive because they don't value it. What patients value is when you can transform their lives with smiles. And honestly, that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're not just teeth fixers. We're here to change people's lives and help them, empower them to live better lives through their smiles. And we have this really cool thing. But when we talk about digital workflows, I like to break it down really simply. And if you really start looking at how we go from single tooth to full arch, I really want us to focus on three basic concepts, and that's designing it, testing it, and delivering it. And what printed digital temporaries do for us is they give us not only a roadmap, but they help us design it, test it, and deliver it. So that way, when we go to finals, things aren't as complicated and they aren't as scary that we have to deal with. But when we start talking about this full arch dentistry, we need to understand that patients make decisions differently. They don't just do it because their insurance does it. They do it because they value it. And when people value things, they make their decisions based on three simple things. It's how much does it cost? How much time does it take? And honestly, how does it make them feel? And we talk about smiles, like this is where it's at. If people value it and they know it, they'll find the money. If we can make good financial menus that give them flexibility, all of a sudden they say yes to more treatment. If we can make the time that they have to take away from work, and so they don't have to come in over and over, whether it's for temporary after temporary or an adjustment after adjustment, it's easier for them to say yes. And honestly, when they can preview a little bit, all of a sudden it gets really exciting. And I think that's one of the things we need to take a step back and think about, that patients make decisions in their real life kind of consistently, whether it's payment plans and fitting into their budget or test driving things. So think of like somebody when they're getting married. Like, I guarantee almost all the women listening to this that are married probably tried on their wedding dress. And I always challenge people, I was like, why did you do that? Why didn't you just pick up a magazine and find the one that looked best on the model and say, I want that. That's what that designer, that's what that dressmaker could make that for me. And the point of that is that we need to try it on ourselves. We need to make an emotional connection of how these things feel for us. And the same thing goes for like when you're going to buy a new car. If you want to buy a car, you're going to test drive it. You want to, how does it feel? How does it sound? And really what it's doing, all of these touch points are reinforcing your decision-making process of like, this is why I want to do this. And when you buy into it, all of a sudden now you'll figure out the time, the money, and all of that. But in dentistry, so many times we just tell patients, hey, you've got worn teeth, you got cracked teeth, you got yellow teeth, you got crooked teeth. Here's a treatment plan. It's $5, $10, $15, $20,000, and we expect patients to pay in full or at least half before we start treatment. And we wonder why patients don't say yes to all of these amazing capabilities that we can provide them. And we don't look at it from the consumer aspect. And our patients at the end of the day are consumers, and we need to treat them like that. So whether that's giving them a trial smile or giving them an AI virtual mockup, it doesn't matter. We need to give patients the ability to kind of test drive or try things on. And that's where 3D printing and temporaries changed the game for me. And I think part of this is because I don't know about you, but I freaking hated these types of temporaries, our bisacryl temporaries. I swear every time I did these, same problem every single time. I put the bisacryl on and I pull it off, and where are the voids? Every single time, without doubt, they're always on the incisal edge of number 8 and 9. I have no idea why. My technique must be terrible, but that's where I get bubbles every time. And then oftentimes we're under reduced because we're trying to be conservative dentists, and so we get show through. And at the end, like if you think about your full arch preparations at this point, you've spent an entire morning, excuse me, or afternoon prepping all of these teeth, and now you're making these temporaries, your assistant is, and like everybody just wants to be done. And now we've got these crappy temporaries. And what changed for me is when I could go from this style temporary that I had to grind into place and beat up the tissue, and then the margins were never good, and so we go to bond and everything's a bloody mess, to something more like this. And you guys, I am a basic dentist. If I can do this, you can do this. But this type of temporary consistently is one of the easiest, most fun workflows I have in my practice. It makes a basic dentist like me look like an amazing cosmetic dentist who's been doing this for 40, 50 years. I can't express to you how much fun it is, but we need to understand that I truly don't think that these are temporaries, because when we start talking about temporaries, temporaries are just placeholders. They fill a space. That's why every time we do the bisacryl temporary and we grind it out of occlusion, inevitably the tooth above it super erupts. And then when we get a crown, the occlusion's off or the contacts are off. And honestly, I don't know about you, and I hope this never happens to you, but it's happened to me many times where we go through the whole workflow and our patient gets in their temporaries, whether it's for veneers or crowns, and then they get their finals, and we get that really awkward statement of, oh, I really liked my temps. And to me, that just kills things, because we're working in an analog workflow, and we have all this digital technology that things need to change, you guys. We need to reinvent how we're doing things. And so what needs to change in our mindset is the concept of temporaries and shifting that to prototypes. And the difference is a prototype is a true exact replica of the desired outcome. So it is the exact copy of what we're trying to do. And that's a big fundamental shift from temporaries, because it allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. We could all of a sudden, now we can test the contacts if we wanted to. We can not only test contours and all of that, but now we can test marginal integrity. We can actually see in our prototypes where our impression is accurate or maybe inaccurate. It allows us to contour and sculpt tissue like we could never do before. And temporaries and prototypes, they come in all shapes, forms, and sizes, because we can have single teeth, which are great. And then we can get these long spanning bridges or full arch sextant quadrants, or even full arch on implants. And a prototype doesn't matter. The concept is the same. It's an exact replica of the desired outcome that we're trying to achieve. And the amazing part about this, because I know some of you are saying, okay, like this is going to take too long. There's the economics of scale. So the amazing part about 3D printing and additive manufacturing is the time it takes to do one restoration is the same time as it takes to do 24 restorations if it's on the same build plate. So what this allows us to do is the more units we are doing, the easier this workflow becomes. For a single central or a single posterior crown, yes, just snap a bisacryl, do it really quickly. But the moment you start getting into multi-unit or bridges or quadrant or full arch dentistry, things change because the complications change, the things that we're testing change, and we need to change our workflow in order to do that. So that whole thing about patients making decisions based on time, money, and how that makes them feel also applies to us in our office, because if I can scale this and do more units at one time, that is going to save me money for sure, because the cost of resin is so cheap. I mean, for when we're talking teeth, we're talking just like a couple dollars for full arches. And that doesn't even matter if it's on implants or not. But where the true cost savings come into play is the lack of any real remakes in the finals. We don't have to have that awkward conversation with our ceramists and our lab technicians of like, hey, patient doesn't like the incisal length, or they don't like the contours, or they don't like this, because none of that will ever happen because we've test run it. We don't have to have that, oh, the margin's open on this area because whatever reason. We've tested it. We've taken images. We know that everything has been worked out before we actually go to final. The other area that this dramatically improves, and especially the more you do, is the time savings of chair time. Not only for the patient being in my chair, but my team members having to contour and clean up Bisacryl everywhere, or more importantly, trying to remove all this stuff and cut it off and do all that. Like all of a sudden we have workflows that now make things more efficient the more we do. And I promise you, the more you do of these, you will enjoy and have more fun doing I kid you not, temporaries. I have more fun with temporaries than finals. The only downside with this whole digital temporary workflow or prototype workflow is that if you have built a practice videoing your patients doing the big crying when they get their finals and delivery, you're not ever going to get that anymore. At least not in the finals, because during the prototype, everything's been worked out. So when you go to prototype to finals, most of your patients are like, it looks the same. And for me, that's the biggest sign that we did something right. Where they do get the excitement is when you go from the prep day to the final or the prototypes. That's where things get really amazing. But enough of like conceptual stuff. Like, how do we do this? Like, what is a workflow? And that's my goal tonight, is to give you a recipe to kind of demystify and simplify this entire workflow so that you can go Monday morning and do this. It does not matter if you have a 3D printer, if you have, I mean, you kind of need an intraoral scanner, but I guess you don't. But your existing workflow can change Monday morning. And so let's talk about this.